So what we have here is a stock Atari Falcon030, 14 megabytes, but no internal expansions. And here we have the Debian 10 net installation ISO, just the name shortened for the file system. Here's the CD-ROM init.rd taken off it, and this is the Linux kernel, obviously with the long name extension shortened. The boot args have been just adjusted for the relative directory, and running bootstrap TOS gives us the same information as seen in the Falcon060 video. Obviously decompression is a little bit slower, and ready to boot. Now that's obviously going through the process of trying to put the initial RAM disk into memory, but that will never complete. That will stay like that now permanently. So, in a minor modification to the last attempt, the init.rd file has now just been decompressed, and the boot arguments file has been modified to read this new decompressed version. So try again. Straight away, not enough memory for the RAM disk. So the previous one would attempt to decompress and presumably fail, causing the hang at that point, whereas this one simply looks at the size of it and refuses straight off the bat. Okay, so as a bit of a third variation, attempting to bypass the memory restriction of the initial RAM disk, I've actually extracted the contents of the CPIO initial RAM disk onto a partition on the drive. So I've modified our boot args here again, this time to use Dev HDA5, which contains an X2 file system with the contents of the CPIO extracted. So I've taken out the load RAM disk and I've taken out the root there. So let's give this one a try then. Well, progress over the last time anyway. And here we go. There's no activity on the disk light. Oh, the flicker. That's just the heartbeat, I think. Yep. So here we are. It's still. It's been about 10 minutes. I've paused and used the international standard metric of how long it takes to make a sausage sandwich. Brown sauce. Thank you for asking. To see how it goes. Anyway, so 10 minutes has gone past, and we're still no further along. The activity light on the hard disk is stuck in a sort of 3 on, 2 off mode, and unfortunately I don't have my serial console available today, so there's not a lot else I can investigate on this one right at this moment. Now I should say that it is not all bad news. What I've done here is I've compiled an absolute bare bones Falcon compatible kernel. This doesn't have any modules, it's all monolithic, but it also has pretty much everything that I don't think I need taken out. So using the same init.rd on the hard drive approach, so Dev HDA5 is in there, but asking for this monolithic pared down kernel, everything runs through as before, loading up the approximately 4 megabyte kernel, so it's not really much different there. And away we go. Now this does take a few seconds. The activity light is doing its 2 bleep, but we are greeted finally with a boot screen. Now, this does not boot through to completion. The reason is entirely my fault. I have simply not compiled in the appropriate partition scheme. So unfortunately at this point it can't recognise my partition. So we don't get very far, but that's the current line that I'm pursuing. It does appear to me that there is a problem with the kernel as distributed with the version 10 NETINST ISO. It could just be size is an issue. However, I didn't get anywhere near this far, and obviously the only difference really here is that I've targeted specifically and taken out module dependencies. Follow up. I tried exactly the same configuration. This is using the Debian 10 NetBoot ISO's VM Linux. It's also using the compressed and also the uncompressed version of the initial RAM disk. So I haven't used my own partition expansion here. This is actually the RAM disk technology as shipped on the ISO. Loaded up here in Atari, and I've cheated because obviously a Falcon030 cannot address 128 megabytes of alt RAM, yet here I've actually added 128 megabytes and I've asked it to load the kernel into the TT RAM there. You can see it's, where are we showing up here? And I just get the same problem, it just hangs at exactly the same point. Here obviously there's a virtual serial console, console's just reporting, only that second one there, it's just reporting the ABC, EGH and IJK, which is what we normally see from the Bootstrap TOS program. So I'm going to conclude from this that there is something wrong with the kernel distributed in the Debian 10 NetInst ISO, pertaining either to the 030 chip, or it's just got some kind of very severe memory restriction, which doesn't tie in with the video scene. I haven't got into the debugging, the kernel debugging, as Eero has posted on the mailing list. I'm afraid that's a little bit beyond me, but there's definitely more research to be done here, and I suppose one of the obvious things I could do is to go back to a Debian 9 ISO. I would also quite like to continue my work compiling cut down Atari specific versions of the kernel and see whether I can get the installer to boot from a hard disk partition rather than an initial RAM disk. That's basically where I am at the moment.